Hey, welcome to the Scott Mann Podcast. Really, really special guest today. Not only a super knowledgeable individual on the aspects of human connection, probably at levels that are normally not talked about. I mean, this guy is really, really deep on human connection, but he's also a very, very dear friend. And we're going to be hosting today Jerry Lujan. Jerry is the founder and CEO of Ep20. Now, Jerry is he's an entrepreneur and the driving force behind the company that he founded, Ep20. And he's also done a ton of coaching and mentoring of individuals in the insurance industry, but also pretty much in any kind of client-facing organization. He's a former collegiate athlete, D1 baseball player, middle infielder, and he's just always been fascinated with high performance. And so most of his coaching, mentorship, developmental tools, they're all focused around high performance through better human connections. And if you look at his heritage, that goes all the way back in New Mexico, his Hispanic heritage all the way back to the 1600s. And his journey in the insurance industry spans 3 generations. Like a lot of the insurance companies across the country, you know, before they went to the big ones or they sold out to the big companies, it was a family business, again, spanning 3 generations. And Jerry himself has gained over 30 years of experience as an insurance agency owner, a sales producer, and a sales manager. And within his own organization, he was the first to make $1 million book of business, that was a really big deal. But the bigger deal was the cost that came with that and what he had to learn as a result of that kind of grind and the better way that was available to him and you and me. And that's what we're going to get into right now. Welcome to the Scott Mann Podcast, where we connect like our lives depend on it. Jerry Lujan. I can't believe it, man. So good to have you in the studio and on this podcast.
Thanks, man. I'm thrilled to be here. It's been looking forward to this for a long time.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. So even the way that this came about is so unique to you and me, the way we roll. But, you know, I want to start with this. Like we're here today because the through line of this thing is, and I've done your introduction, but we'll get into the backstory, but we're here today because the through line on this podcast is human connection, and that's something that you and I have talked about a lot. But of late, like you have really focused on the impact of AI, and its and the need for human connection. And I know I'm showing the football a little bit there, but we're going to get to that. But what would you say to someone who is in in the insurance industry or any kind of client-facing industry right now, if you were able to tell them like 1 or 2 sentences of how their life is about to change, like what would you say to them? I mean, like you've got to get them to pay attention, like really listen to what the hell you're saying. What would you say to them?
Yeah, there's a technology tidal wave coming, and I really believe people can have the opportunity to ride it and have the biggest opportunity maybe they've ever had in their career. Or if they're not paying attention at all, it could like destroy them, or they be drowned by it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really something that you've pretty much committed almost like your life to in the last couple of years is bringing that message down to the folks that are living it every day, and that's what I really love about your work is that, because there's all this talk around AI, and I get it, but it's a lot of cerebral talk to me. It's folks that are enamored with it to the point that it kind of goes over people's head, I think, including mine.
Yeah.
Because I can't really relate to it. It just seems like, well, we're screwed then, or yay, but it's not like what does it mean to me, And so that's where I kind of want to go today. But before we do that, I wanted to kind of let viewers and listeners have a chance to get a better sense of you and our relationship together, because you and I both really come at human connection, and I think in a pretty solid way. But tell us a little bit about you and your family, and kind of, I just think even just your story, your family's story in New Mexico. Like tell us a little bit about that. you're growing up, and then I'll pivot us into some of the discoveries you made along the way.
Yeah. So my family, I thought we had been in New Mexico. It's born and raised in New Mexico. I thought that we were maybe 6 generations deep in New Mexico, and my dad got involved in something called the National Hispanic Cultural Center. He was one of the founders of it, to share Hispanic culture for the world to understand it from, and part of that journey, they did a family history, and they have a whole unit over there that does that. And the Mormon Church came in actually and did it in genealogy of the family, and found out that the first Luhans came and settled in what's now New Mexico in 1600. And so I'm a 17th generation family member in New Mexico. And so now we're into 20, maybe even 21.
Wow.
So been around the area a long time, born in Santa Fe, grew up mainly in Albuquerque, but a lot of our family has thankfully stayed in the New Mexico area.
And it's an amazing family. I feel like they're my family, honestly. I feel like they're an extension of my family. I think, they've welcomed Monty and I in such an amazing way on so many levels, with supporting the play, bringing the play out there, bringing talks on counterterrorism out there, veterans events. I mean, like, it's literally been probably one of the most welcoming communities I've ever seen. And at the heart of it is your family. And I think that's one of the things I want to really get across here. Like, in addition to that, though, is the family's business, right? The Luhan name, and in this industry that we call insurance, like, you guys are those roots, those business roots run deep in New Mexico as well, right?
Yes, the main business, the family business, I guess you could say, is my grandfather started an insurance agency in 1926, and then my dad and my uncle, my aunt, a lot of family members got involved, and then my dad and uncle started in another agency in Albuquerque, same name, and so I'm a 3rd generation family member in the business before I sold my interest. But yeah, it's next year it'd be 100 years that the family has, most of its business has come from the insurance industry. Yeah,
and I think also looking at just the humble roots and origins of, like, your family line, and just like your father, Eduardo Lujan, is like a second dad to me. But just like this, he is, in my opinion, the quintessential elder statesman, who just represents human connection. Because he's had a career in politics as well, right?
Yes, he's been pretty involved, only in kind of behind the scenes,
right?
But I never met anybody that could go to the state capitol and walk down the halls and talk to anybody on both sides, even today.
Yeah,
which is.
Yeah, he's how old now at the recording of this?
He's 92 years old.
He's 92 years old. Like, and this guy, a lot like my dad, the woodsman. In fact, they know each other, and we call them the Jedi elders.
The Jedi elders,
right? And they are when those two get together, it's hilarious, and they hold court. But I remember also, and where I'm going with this, you guys, is I want you to understand truly the level of human connection here, and the value of human connection, and how deep it runs, because we're gonna really build this out, and we're gonna contrast it with the emergence of technology, the rapid onslaught of technology, and onslaught's probably the wrong word, the rapid advance of technology, and how we can think about that. But one thing I just want to say about your dad, to kind of give the folks an idea about it. I remember I had breakfast with him one morning. I think it was maybe when the play was in town, Last Out was in town. He took me to breakfast, and at this little cafe in downtown Albuquerque, and Sam Donaldson is there. And, this is a really world-renowned newscaster from back in the day. And when we walk in, Sam Donaldson's kind of holding court with all these other folks, talking events of the day. Eduardo Lujan walks in, and Sam Donaldson is like a 7-year-old fawning little boy talking to Eduardo. Like it was, like, yes, sir. I mean, it was amazing, the respect that, and it's not like in a butt kissing kind of way. It was like true, like respect for the miles he had run.
Yeah.
Amazing. All right, so with that established, what I want to do is I want to kind of get into, there's a story that you tell. I mean, you were running a very successful path as an insurance producer. Like, you were playing the game, doing what you needed to do. But as you were doing that, a certain young lady asked for an appointment that kind of changed the trajectory of your life. And I wonder if you could share that story with us.
Yeah. So in my business, I was always a big goal setter, and I had this big dream, and this family business that I've talked about. No one had ever hit in the industry. They call it a $1 million book of business in the history of the agency. And I've been always kind of a runt, a grinder. And I said, well, if no one's done it, I'm going to be the first. Well, 17 years later, I finally hit it. And about a week later, she was 5 years old at the time, came to me one Friday night and said, Daddy, I need an appointment with you tomorrow morning to take me to the park. And unfortunately, I almost said no because I was working. Well, the reason the appointment came up is I was working 70, 80, 100 hours a week. I didn't really know what I was in for, but when we got to the park, she asked me why I didn't love her. Mm. And when I said, of course I love you, why would you ever say that? And she didn't even hesitate. She said, because you don't spend any time with me. And I'd been in sales for 17 years. And so this is how lame I was, I guess. So the only thing I could think of to say was, well, that's not true. I'm with you right now. And she pierced me. I mean, looked me straight in the eyes and said, Daddy, you're with me, but you're not with me. Mm. Yeah, it still gives me the chills. I mean, it's, and so I knew right then that, they're either going to leave, because, all I did was work. I only had two tools, time and effort. I had no other, no other way to try and build it. And I thought I was doing good by trying to build a business for our financial well-being for the family. But I didn't really know any other way how to do it besides just try to outwork it. And
so that's a kick in the groin, man.
Oh, man.
Like what are you thinking when she said that? Like, what's going through your mind?
I'd felt at the time like I was in a vice, the pressure of building the business, the pressure at home of raising, she was 5 at the time, my son was 2, raising a family and being present and things like that. And obviously I wasn't very present. And so I got some coaching, and when I got the coaching, it resonated with me, and it wasn't insurance industry specific. It was for entrepreneurs who would kind of. Yeah.
Because a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of transitioning veterans, first responders, they feel the same kind of thing. Like this isn't unique to the insurance industry. Like there's that vice is a very real thing. So you got the coaching, and what were some, like you started to kind of like, you started to change things, or what happened?
Yeah, I started to understand myself better.
Right.
Where I should be playing, where I shouldn't be playing, what some of the ways that gave me energy. Yeah. How to understand what kind of clients that I best fit for. And when I learn more about myself, my why that I've discovered is called find a better way and share it. So when I was always seeking improvement and finding other solutions for people, it's when I had the most amount of energy. And so I learned some techniques from that. And fortunately, over the next 4 years, I quadrupled my business and did it in about half the amount of time.
So you completely transformed, revamped the grind that you were doing.
Right.
And the way the industry told you to do it. And you refocused kind of back on the things that mattered and just got a better sense of yourself and where you put your energy?
Yes. And where I didn't. Maybe more importantly, where I didn't
What you
put my
said no
energy.
to.
Because when I was trying to grow, I really would work with anybody, any kind of business, whether I liked them or knew anything about it. If I could try to write some business to grow the business, and it just wasn't working anymore. And so when I changed, I reduced. This isn't for everybody, but I reduced the number of clients that I had in an effort to focus more and be able to give more and have more of an impact on the ones I did work with. And we were fortunate to start working with some different clientele, and we significantly grew. And the thing about it is that what I learned was that then people started calling me from all over the place saying, how did you do that?
Right. And did that change your relationship with Kelly and your son Jared? Like, did things change on that front? And Lisa, your wife?
Yeah, that's so family life got better. I went from 80 to 100 hours a week to situationally 40 to 50 maybe, depending once in a while, a little more. The business is pretty demanding business, but it was the norm was somewhat normal, if you could say that. And so I was able to start coaching a lot, spending a lot of time with the family. And so I didn't, I didn't miss it. It just completely, I guess, exponentially changed, both in growth in significantly less time.
Right.
And so when I started coaching, it was interesting. People started saying, you seem like you have the most fun coaching. And is there some of the things that you've been able to do to grow your team? My clients started asking me for help on how to grow their teams, them and their teams. And at first I said, well, I don't really do that. I work in the insurance and the risk management game. And some clients said, no, you do. And you're gonna for me. And
and I think, look, I think there's a couple things that you've said already that I just want to kind of call out, because again, there's you call it a universal singular, like there's a universal application to some of this. And one of them is when we're going through life and we get that tap on the shoulder and someone says, you really do this well. And you're like, yeah, but I don't do that. And they're like, well, you should.
Yeah.
And I'll pay you to do it, And that's kind of what was happening for you, right? Like people were saying, hey, you've done this. I really would like to know how you do this. Can I hire you to do it? And you enjoyed doing it. So you're starting to get a sense of like, that's kind of where the universe is moving you.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
So as you started to do that, what did you start to notice about that work of working with other people? And what were you starting to kind of see in that was common to what you'd seen? And then what were some of the things that you started to try to help them with?
Well, what I found was that when people had energy, real energy, I mean, physical energy, physical and mental energy, and were doing things that they loved, that they performed at a significantly higher level than other people that were doing all kinds of things. Some they loved, some they hated. That the performance was completely different. And along the way, one of the mentors that I have to give great credit to is, her name's Kathy Colby. She created an assessment called Colby.
Yep, very popular assessment.
It measures how you naturally take action. And when I first went to the coaching program, they had me run that. And at first I was like, they're not going to psychoanalyze me and this stuff. I didn't really understand it. But when I learned about it, it freed me up. And so I started building my team based on that. And when I did, and when I started, then when clients started saying, I want to know more about this, I went and got certified. And Kathy started mentoring me on how the mind works, and that there's 3 parts of the mind, and different parts of the mind do different things. And all 3 have to be aligned in order for somebody to sustain performance. And so that's what got me to really start thinking about, wow, there's some actual science to this and an art to it, and it can be predictable. Right.
So, you talk about energy and the management of energy. That's something that I think you and I have common ground on. There's 2 quotes. Well, in my book, Nobody's Coming to Save You, one of the main quotes that I talk about, Einstein says we're all mostly energy. Mm-hmm. But Professor James Clausen says that leadership is the management of energy, yours and those around you. So essentially, I mean, that's what you're saying here, is that how we manage our own energy is kind of at the epicenter of everything else that we do.
Right.
And those three divisions of the brain speak to that.
Correct. And what, the curiosity in me, since I was young, I was always fascinated by Hall of Famers.
Okay.
And what was the difference?
Because you were a college baseball player.
Yeah, I played baseball in college. And so Roberto Clemente has met since I was a kid. I'd do book reports on him. I was fascinated by how he played the game, but how he could keep his energy level and play so hard year in and year out. And so I started really studying what's the difference between those that, maybe are good, get to the pro level, maybe all-star or all-pro, versus the Hall of Famers. And the difference is sustainability and their management of energy. And what I found was they do fewer things better than anybody else. And they don't do a whole lot of things that they don't like to do.
Right.
Because it drains you.
Yeah.
And so if
you call that your things that ring the bell, right? Your three things that ring the bell.
The three things that ring the bell. We work with our clients on how do you try to identify the three biggest things that you do that have an impact on you, your clients, the business, your family. Right. And if you could do those the majority of the time, can't be all the time, but the majority of the time, and understand the filters in essence of what's going to tap you and start draining your energy or even leaking it. We can't afford to play at a high level. We can't afford that to happen very often.
Like I was just talking to a buddy of mine who is a former Green Beret, and he's stepping into writing, and he hates bureaucracy and administrative stuff. And we were talking about how we both hate that and how it just bleeds us dry. Yeah. Is that what you mean?
Exactly. But a lot of people, they get put in a position where they have to do some of that. And so maybe 25, 30, 40% of their job.
Well, like when I was in the Army, you had to do
you had to do that. Well, to me, it's very predictable. Both performance and burnout is predictable based on knowing yourself, your three parts of the mind, and we're all different. We're humans. And how do you then activate that as part of what you do, how you do it, and why you do it? And when you can understand that and have some filters, then you can make decisions based on is it in alignment or not. And it's easier to say no when things are way outside of that you just, And so when I tighten my filters, I was able to have reasons why I'd say yes and reasons why I'd say no, and it didn't wear me out anymore. Even to say no was kind of uplifting if I had a reason why to say no, so that when I said yes, I could have a bigger impact without, ruining relationships and things like that. I could articulate it better as to why.
Yeah, because there's so many. I mean, you're always on my ass about this, about saying no, because it's hard for me.
It's very hard.
It's very hard for me to say no. But I'm learning to do that. And I know that when I do, it's like you say, like I'm saying no so that I can say yes to this thing. Right. Right. And that does help a lot. But learning to do that, because the energy suck if I don't is enormous.
Yeah. Like for you, if you don't feel like you're having an impact, making a difference and adding value to whatever you're doing, your why is to contribute to a cause greater than yourself. Yeah. And when you can, then it's going to give you energy. So it's like the nozzle's always in the tank. Yeah. Right. Or the battery's the battery's always charged.
Right. And it maps exactly on what I talk a lot about, with the MESS framework is that we are, and Dr. Ivan Tyrrell says this, is we are meaning seeking, meaning assigning creatures. And it's at the heart of our operating system is meaning. Right. We're the only creatures that have that. And so if you're in alignment with that, with your meaning, with your purpose, then it only makes sense that the energy is just full on.
Yeah. So the three parts starts with the meaning side. That's the first part of the brain. It's called the affect part of the brain, which is really the motivation side of the brain. So if we believe in it, there's meaning to it, we'll have the energy to keep moving forward. The second part is, the science word is conative. Most people say, you mean cognitive? And no, I mean conative. This is what Kathy Kolbe's brilliance is. She created a tool that has nothing to do with the meanings part of the brain. It only measures how are you naturally going to take action and for how long. That's the second part of the mind.
Pure energy management.
Pure energy management based on how are you going to take action.
Like a natural inclination?
Yes. Yes, wow. Like you And your numbers, you being in charge of a lot of information and all the details and keeping track of things.
Unmitigated disaster.
It doesn't mean you don't have the
I can do
cognitive
it.
ability
I can do it.
to do it. But if you have to do that over a period of time, it's predictable that it's going to wear you out. Okay. So then the third part of the mind, which can kind of be overarching.
You hear that, Colin? Tracking that?
Yeah.
Write that down.
It's definitely for you. The third part of the mind then is the cognitive, which is, do you have the ability or not, or the ability to learn?
Right.
Well, a lot of people, that kind of shades over the others, like, okay, well, they're smart so they can do anything, and they can for a while if they're smart or they have the ability to learn. But if they can't stay motivated, or if it does, there's no meaning to it, and if it's way outside the boundaries for how much it drains them from how they naturally take action, then I say all three have to be aligned. And when they are, then you can perform at a high level over a long period of time. When one of them starts slipping, we start seeing some leakage.
Because you're obsessed with performance.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a fair statement, right?
Yes.
I mean, you really are.
Yeah.
And I am too. I think we come at it a little differently, but I find your obsession with performance so cool because that's the lens you're looking through. Right. Everything you evaluate, every tool, every filter, it's to level up the performance of anybody in their particular arena.
Right.
Because it kind of comes from that operating system, right? Is that accurate?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So your body of work is evolving as you're doing this, because it started with the Kolbe, and then you start to branch out into kind of a more holistic body of work around performance, right?
Around performance. And Kathy, when she started mentoring me, God bless her, she said, Jerry, Kolbe, it is by far the best test. I think it's the only one in that arena of the cognitive part of the mind. But she said, you have to remember there's all three parts.
Right.
And so that's when my mission started of, okay, well, how do I try to get a tool as good as Kolbe for the other two parts that help people predict both performance and burnout. And so, the other one is on the motivation side is we use called the YOS.
Yeah.
Gary Sanchez happens to live in Albuquerque where I do, and we became good friends, and I got pretty involved in that, and that's the one I chose. There's a lot of them out there.
And Gary took his, if I remember correctly, he took his motivation for that from Simon Sinek's TED Talk about start with why.
Yeah.
And then, but he wasn't satisfied with the answer of really digging into that and like actually what was going on. And so he built that out more, right?
Yeah. The theory is great.
Yeah.
And Simon is a genius at that. I couldn't really figure out my own why from that system either. And Gary figured out a way how to do it that I didn't believe was possible because I'd been searching for it for so long. And when he discovered mine, that's when I realized my why is to find a better way and share it. My life made so much more sense. And because I felt like I'd been on a roller coaster all my life. I'd go and get things done, start doing it at a high level, and then I'd kind of start over. And I thought it was a curse. Well, I realized that's kind of when I have the most amount of energy, when I'm finding things that need improvement.
Yeah.
And then I go to work on improving them.
Yeah.
Then that's when I have the most amount of energy. And so I've kind of surrendered to it because I know I can't help myself.
And then the third piece of the brain and the test for that.
So there's different ones of that also. Kathy Kolbe's dad actually was a gentleman named Wonderlic.
Yeah.
That's an IQ test. They give it in the military.
Yeah.
They give it to NFL quarterbacks.
Right.
And he believed that IQ was the only measurement of success. And she didn't. And that's how, since she started studying the other part of the mind. But we use something that we created called the energy filter, and that's where it ends up. How do you start identifying all the things that you do, and how do you categorize them into an area that are actually drain you,
right?
Or there's a leakage when you're doing it, or you can maintain by doing it. It doesn't drain you or give you energy. And then the last piece is, does it sustain you to where like the battery's always full, like it's always being charged, and that's what the best in the world stay in that arena and find people around them who do. I mean, they do. Things.
If you read Daniel Coyle's Little Book of Talent, for example, like he's got 52 tips I think that speak to high performance, or but I think one thing that we can agree on here is that there's just certain things that high performers or pros do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's just, it was Stephen Pressfield, Tom Brady, but special operators, I think, are very similar, right?
Yes.
And, but there's just certain things that they do, and it's not all work related. It's not all occupational, right? And that's, as you've continued to, so you're going through this and you're building this body of work, and now you're starting to coach people on it. I mean, are people resistant to it? How do people respond to when you put this out
you're
there?
not going to put me in a box, or, just because my result says this doesn't mean I'm like everybody else. And it doesn't
Right.
mean that. And so it's taken, we've done tens of thousands of reps now. And I honestly believe, this may sound arrogant, but that we've kind of cracked the code on predictable either performance or burnout.
Yeah.
As to, if you're operating way outside, you can do it for a while, but it's going to catch up to you.
I will tell you, and I'll say it right to the camera. So Jerry, in a lot of his work, one of the things he's really good at is he can look at, a series of diagnostics that you take, and they're pretty simple. But then not only will he look at it and he'll say, okay, this, we believe this is your Y and this is your Colby. For example, I think I'm a 3833.
3393.
339, which is the only normal Colby score, by the way. But suffice it to say, I'm a very high quick start, and then everything else is pretty low.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean you can't do the other things. It's how much time do you spend in there. And quick start for the audience it's all about like iteration, jumping in the middle of things.
Yeah.
Need pretty extreme deadlines.
Yeah.
The best thinking comes at the last minute. Well, when people don't understand that about somebody, then they could chastise you and say, well, why didn't you get this out ahead of time? Or why didn't you give me your best thinking a month ago? It's just almost not possible.
It's not. I find that I'm literally coming up with stuff as I'm walking on stage.
Right. That's when you're going to have your best
ideas. Or I'm
ideas.
walking into a negotiation. It doesn't mean that I don't prepare, but a lot of the way I prepare is to get my instrument open,
right,
so that I can receive that. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense, and not everybody's like that.
Right.
But if they try to make you be like total scripted, it'll stifle somebody like you, and that's what I'm saying is so predictable about when we're coaching people. We coach them based on them.
Yeah.
Right, and so then they're free, as Kathy Colby always says. The freedom is the ability to be yourself.
And that's flow state.
And that's flow state as well. And so when you know that about yourself and you can get yourself in a position and you can actually express it to somebody else, because one of the hardest things I find is it's virtually impossible for people to understand why and how others don't just do things the way that we do.
Right.
Because it works for us every time,
we even
right?
say it to our
We even
kids,
say
like,
it to
why
us,
don't you do
it this way? It always works.
Because that's our reference, our filter.
That's not theirs.
Right.
And we're all different. And so when we know that about ourselves and each other, actually, I've been married 38 years, and my wife a few years ago, Lisa, God bless her, she said, Jerry, you have to do more of this work. And I said, I know. I love it. I think it's very impactful. And she goes, no, I don't think you understand. I said, what don't I understand? And she said, I honestly don't think we'd still be married had we not known this about each other, because we are extreme opposite. So we used to get on each other a lot, have actually fights arguments about, why aren't you doing it this way? Why aren't you doing that? You must not like it. You must not care. Well, it has nothing to do with that. It's just when it goes against your grain, it wipes you out.
And I think this is where I'm trying to go with this, is that it's so... It is so uniquely human, understanding our own humanity and those internal dynamics to the point that we not only understand ourselves better, we understand our teammate, our spouse. And one of the things I was going to say was, the work that you've done, for example, with my nonprofit, my for-profit, the cast of our play, he did this with every one of the cast members in the original cast of Last Out, and actually told us, like, to the letter where we took a lot of our energy from, what would wear us out. And man, what a difference that made on the tour. What a difference it made in our tolerance of one another when we were tired and going at it. But you're right, like Monty and me, it's a game changer, And I guess where I'm going with this is, like, there's a whole realm If you think special operations, SWAT teams, if they better understood each other, like at that level, at that human level. And this is the thread I want to pull now. I believe that primal understanding of our own human nature and the nature of those around us is critical to where we're going in this world. But you've made some discoveries, like as you continue to do this coaching, and I mean, admittedly on high performance, but you started looking at some stuff, particularly one thing that was coming our way.
Yeah.
That really changed the nature of urgency and focus and just frankly the intentionality in which you go about what you're doing. Can you talk about that and how you've come to arrive contextually at this wave that you're talking about all the time?
Yeah. So to button up that other piece,
sure,
real quick, if you don't mind. One is that 5-year-old is now she's 33 and she's my business partner.
And she's getting ready to
get married, which you'll be at. So it's
and the relationship today.
Yeah, I didn't miss it, which I look back, it right now gives me the chills that even if they wouldn't have left, they would have grown up, and I would have never known them. We're extreme opposites as well.
Right, you are.
And so utilizing these tools has helped us immensely on how to become better partners, and our growth is pretty phenomenal by us playing to our strengths and understanding when we start getting on each other's nerves, why.
At our mastermind that we just got back from, Jerry and I were talking about, I think he needs to put a book out, another book. And we were talking about it, and one of the things you said was, I need to call Kelly.
Yeah, she's my partner. She's a great filter. She's a lot more organized than I am. That's what we know about each other. Yeah. We actually laugh when I'm more of a brainstormer and she's more of a process developer. And so she can take some of my brainstorming and I can take enough of her process. But we start noticing when we start kind of wearing each other out.
And her Colby versus yours, where you're more of a quick start, she needs some time.
She needs some time, and she needs to gather the information and put it in a really organized
like I'm saying, if you didn't have that awareness of her, you'd just be like, great idea, Kel. Scott, and I think we should write a book. Can we start tomorrow?
That's exactly right. And as much as I love her and I'm grateful for her, I mean, she actually, because of her gumption to take me to the park, completely changed our lives.
Right on.
But we're completely opposite. And had I not known this, as much as I love her and have known her entire life, I don't think we'd still be working together. I'm almost sure we wouldn't, because we were butting heads. But to the business side of it also, and this is kind of, I'll wrap this and get to the next segment, is there's no way that I could have grown my business without a great team. And part of building a great team was getting the right people on the right seats. And I felt like we had an unfair advantage by using these tools to know what's predictable about them based on what could they do, spend all day with the battery full, rather than doing things where we knew it was going to start draining their battery.
So you're using it in a front-footed way, not as a how do we fix the dynamics and drama on our team, but how do we use it as a leading mechanism to select the team for the right seats.
That's what we did. Now we do with some of our clients have to do it the opposite way, because they're already there. So then we help them. Okay, well, what's the best place for them if they're committed in things based on their makeup as to what they do. But so it's I've just been really fortunate to have really good mentors, really good people around me, and people that believed in it to try it when it was probably. People thought we were crazy. Like, hey, we could build based on this. Yeah. And that's when my clients started noticing, and that's when they wanted it, which I guess at first I didn't know that it was needed as much as it was needed by other people. Well,
you cracked me up because, like, just throughout the time that we've known each other, we met at a Bo Easton event around storytelling. And, I've watched you evolve this capability over a friggin' decade.
Yeah.
But there's like at times in my life, we'll make a certain move personnel wise, and you'll either talk to that individual or you'll even have them do the test, and you'll be like, hey, that's not going to work. And I'm like, no, shut up, man. It's going to work. I got this. and like in record time, you'll be like, "Where's so and so?" I'm like, "I don't want to talk about it. Shut up."
Yeah.
But it really is. It's phenomenal in our ability to just understand how the other person's energy levels move and where they take that energy.
Yeah, we are who we are. What's
Yeah.
Oscar Wilde say? Be yourself, because everybody else is already taken.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't really know themselves. I didn't for a long
Yeah.
time, so I was trying to always emulate somebody else or do something
Well, in
that
this
somebody
time of
told me.
churn, we feel like we don't have time to.
Yeah.
There's no time to do that, right? And that's one of the things I just really want to unpack this. One other thing I want to say, though, this is for all of us. Your story that you opened up with. How many times have you told that story about the park in Kelly, do you think? Could you even venture a guess?
Thousands, maybe?
Yeah, I'd say thousands. I've heard it. And one of the points I just want to make, when you talk about human connection, that's like storytelling, the brain works in metaphor. And I guarantee you, like, even when I've heard that story multiple times, we automatically, we picture you and Kelly in the park and that we're watching that happen, and there's an immediate emotional connection to you. But at the same time, it's called autobiographical listening.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sitting here going, I remember like a similar conversation with my oldest son coming back from a deployment.
Yeah.
So I'm processing my own lived experience in your narrative.
Right.
And that's a powerful tool.
Well, it's why we're humans, and why connection is so important.
Yeah.
That we've been on a path. We do things maybe a little bit differently as to how we get there, but it's all in the same place. And I think that's where you were heading with the other thing that we're working on with AI.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason that you're so big on human connection right now.
Yeah.
What is it?
It's the most important thing that we've ever had, I think. And why is when I say the technology tidal wave of AI, I'm not a tech guy, but I've studied what's happening and what's going to happen. And, back to Kelly, she worked for a guy named Peter Diamandis.
Oh, yeah.
I met him at
Abundance.
met him at a conference. He wrote a book called Abundance. He was promoting the book at the conference.
Yeah.
And he was the speaker.
Big time futurist.
Big time futurist. Yeah. He's created the X Prize Foundation, which is now Virgin Galactic. He's, he had a company that was trying to figure out how to mine asteroids. He's got a university, that Singularity University. I mean, he's really high tech stuff, longevity things, so anything with tech. But it revolves around the concept of exponential growth.
Okay.
And when he spoke, he started talking about where technology was going and how fast it's going and the reason why it's going. And I was in the audience kind of like, yeah, here we go again. This is like the Jetsons or something. It's still 50 years away, 100 years away. It's not going to be that fast. And he started talking about why it's going to be here quicker than we think and what kinds of things are going to happen. And what blew me away is he said, I want you to think about something for a minute and how our brains process things, but how really technology works and how it's moving. And he said, I'll never forget it. He's on the stage and he goes, if you were to walk 30 steps linearly, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, up to 30, where would you be? And everybody's like, well, right
into
there.
The building would be.
In the building. We'd probably in that it was a big ballroom, we'd still be in the room.
Yeah.
He goes, okay, yeah, that's right. I mean, we could count,
Right.
Some people got up and started walking, to see where it was. And he goes, okay, that's fine. That's how our brains work. That's how everything pretty much is. But technology doesn't work that way. Here's how technology is working.
So that's linear, what
That's
you
linear.
just described. That's linear. Yeah.
That's linear thinking. And that's how we've been taught. And that's how our brains can comprehend that. Here's what blew me away and really got me thinking differently about where things were going and the impact it could have on all of us. He said, if you were to walk 30 steps exponentially, and then he said, here's what I mean by exponential, if those of you that haven't really thought about it. Instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, up to 30, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16,
Doubling
32,
each time.
64. It doubles every time. Where would you be?
You know what, Colin? You know what my country ass said? We were at the game last night when he asked me that. I said, the other end of the field. That's what I said. That's what my, and I was, that's what I swagged.
That's what most people say because that's what our brain is naturally comprehends, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to understand. But, everybody's like, well, what is it? And there was answers, a mile.
Yeah.
Someone I think said 5 miles away. And he laughed and he said, that's what the issue is. That's why it's hard to understand. And someone yelled out, well, what the hell's the answer? and he said, 27 times around the planet.
Does that surprise you? It doesn't surprise Colin, but that's Colin.
He's a genius.
He's a fucking genius.
He's a genius. So that, my friends, is why technology is going to start moving so fast. And when it's at, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32 even, it's still not, it's still in the semblance of linear.
Right.
Linear. Looks kind of like linear, although it's moving, but it's not like, well, once it gets to like 7, 8 times multiple, it starts moving this way. And then once it starts going, past, 10, then the numbers, they're doubling every time. So a big number doubling every time.
So I'm gonna bring it because this is where I think we can go two directions with this, and I've seen podcasts that go high and left, high and right on what that's all going to mean, up here at a macro level. Mm-hmm. But I feel like the way you keep it really grounded is what most folks watching this would appreciate. You gave me 2 examples last night. You stayed with examples, and you gave one about the level of information of a former president versus a piece of technology that we have today. Could you just start with that one, just as an example of linear versus exponential thinking, kind of in everyday terms?
I'll give you a couple of examples. This cell phone,
right?
How many machines or how many things has it eliminated now?
Right.
That's right here. And when this first started, a computer system that had, I don't know, a millionth of this capacity was millions of dollars and took up buildings.
Yeah.
Now there's more power, more capacity in this than there is in that. And what is this? $1,000 maybe?
Right.
This 12 years ago, when I first started learning about this, they were talking that we had more information in our mobile phone than President Clinton had as the president of the United States. We have more information 12 years ago. So imagine now with exponential growth.
Like in the way it's presented.
The way it's presented.
Yeah. Like the synthesized presented information. Right. And then the other one that I thought was a really helpful example for me was when you specifically honed in on the travel industry.
Yeah.
You talk about that for a second?
Yeah, so
because a lot of us remember
what's going to happen to a lot of people. And again, I'm not just there's solutions and it revolves around connection. Why we connect so much on this, but the travel industry at one point in time, very transactional in nature, and they had more information at their fingertips. And so they made money by buying your airline ticket, buying your hotel, buying your rental car, making reservations for you at places, things like that, right? That was a big piece of their business, and they got a piece of it.
Yeah.
Well, the transaction of that, because of the phone, I'm very low tech, but I can make my hotel room or hotel. I mean, I changed my flight last night, and
I was astounded that you were able to do that.
Yeah, no.
I mean, that's a whole different podcast.
If I could do it, that tells you that anybody can do it.
Yeah.
But
point taken, man. I mean,
point
seriously.
taken. So people that business was very lucrative for a long period of time. It's pretty much gone. It's a transaction. It can be done for free. It can be done very easily.
Yeah.
So businesses that are in that realm, I believe, they have to be paying attention.
Well, what are they doing? Well, the ones that are still around are doing something.
So the ones that are around, which there is some around, they help people live into their dreams. So they're in the emotion game and the connection game, and what do you want to do that they can help people kind of shape something that they just don't know. Or that I guess somebody could surf and look at things, but they want some input. They want somebody who is going to get them excited, help them get excited to live into something that they've been thinking about, maybe saving years and years and years for. Now, do they occasionally still buy an airline ticket for somebody? Yes, when it's in that realm, but they no longer are in the business of buying,
just booking travel
and things like that.
Yeah.
For very, very large organizations, maybe if there's a central place, but it's an example, and that's what worries me about the insurance industry.
Which is where you grew up.
Which is where I grew up, and why.
So there's a natural affinity to that. Plus, it's your family's legacy.
Yeah,
and a lot of families' legacies across the country.
I mean, over the years, there's probably thousands of families that we've had a direct impact on. That were employees and things, and then all the businesses. I mean, it's a very noble industry that people put everything on the line every day, right? There's a lot of risk out there, and if there's not somebody that's there helping them protect that risk, then things could go haywire for a business. But if any transaction business, in my humble opinion, because AI now, because when 5G came on exponentially, the power, the speed, and all that now has given the capability for AI to do what it's doing. It's always been in the back burner. It just didn't really have the speed.
Well, let's take your industry a bit further. And granted, like any industry, there's also a shadow side to that industry, right? Like, with insurance, there's people that have negative connotations of it, and just like they do the military or anything else. But I do believe, as an intended industry, it has a noble approach, but yet it's in danger of being overtaken and just disrupted, right? Just radically disrupted.
Hugely disrupted.
Why and what does that look like when it happens? Because I think it's, I want to stay here for a second, because I think it's a harbinger of other things. But speak to your industry. Why is it at risk, and what does it look like? Not at risk for severe disruption. Yeah.
Well, there's several reasons why the insurance industry, and there's a lot of them, but I know more about the insurance industry. I spent my career in it. But there's several reasons. One is it's old, antiquated, and hasn't changed that much the way it does business in 200 years. And secondly, it's there's a lot of money that runs through the insurance industry. Yeah. Hundreds of billions, if not in some areas trillions. Yeah. And so they're from a target for somebody that's going to invest and want to attack it. It's a pretty easy target.
And when you say attack it, you mean like transform it.
Transform it.
Do to it what was done to the travel industry.
Exactly right.
To basically what? Harvest market share, really, right? To do it for less, more efficiently, and to harvest that market share. Right.
So for a long time, people said it's too complicated, and so no one could do it by using technology. Well, in the personal side of things, personal homes, cars, things like that, that's been going on for a long time, to where people are now just going direct. A lot of times they're just buying from machines, not from people, whether they know it or not. And then
this is still in the insurance industry.
It's still in the insurance industry. That happens. But on the other side, I spent most of my time in the commercial area, where, the business, the liability, the more complex kinds of things. And people said it's too complex of a business. And for a while, it's been able to kind of get away with that. And so I'll take it back
it's too complex for AI to overtake.
For technology to overcome. There's just too many moving parts. You got to know too much. Too much data, too much information. There's too much to it. Well, that was the talk, and that was what they thought was going to be saved, in essence, from the technology. But if you think about back in not that long ago, people that had the most data and information had the most value, because they could do things with it as to how they were going to help protect people, how to underwrite it, how to make sure that they got them the best policies and things like that. Well, then Google came along and other mechanisms like that. And so the value of the data and information all of a sudden was gone because now it's free and it's instantaneous. You could just look up anything,
right.
I mean, and have it at your fingertips. Right. Well, what I've been saying since I started understanding what AI was, and AI is, and I'm not a technician of AI, but in studying it and trying to use it some, the amount of things that it does is, if you know what questions to ask, it has a lot of knowledge. And why it has knowledge is because the more it gets fed, the more it learns and retains and can keep learning. It's not static.
Right.
And so once that is now going to be to knowledge, it's going to be at our fingertips, and it's going to be free because of AI. The amount of information in there is kind of astounding. You can ask it a lot of things. It can do a lot of things. So what's left? People are like, because when I go around the country talking about this, I mean, there's a lot of arrows being shot at me in stink eye of what you're talking about.
I was going to ask you how people are responding to this when you talk about it.
They don't like it.
Well, of course not.
No, of course not.
Because of what it means ultimately, right? I mean, so, potentially.
Instead of just throwing a bomb in the room and walking away and saying you're on your own, what I've then gone to, okay, well, what can we do? Because I owe a lot to the industry.
Yeah,
I love the industry. I think it helps people a lot. But there's going to be some changes coming, and if people aren't aware, then they're going to get blindsided. And if you're just in a transaction game and you're not connecting with people, you're not really figuring out what they need and want, and then technology, the AI, will soon be able to do things. I say that the process has usually been about a 90-day process to kind of go from A to Z. When you start talking to somebody
for insurance,
before you bring them the solution, all the different things. It's been roughly a 90-day process forever. It's laborious. There's a lot of manual things that you got to do.
But that's the window.
That's the window.
Okay.
That's going to go, I'd say, within 2 years, 5 at the most, but within 2 years. And I'm looking into how to try to validate this based on the speed of the technology. But that's going to go from 90 days, I think it's going to go to 90 minutes and then potentially 90 seconds.
In 2 to 5 years.
In 2 to 5 years, as to what it takes.
I don't disagree with that.
And so,
I mean, I don't think that's a stretch at all.
So what? And it's going to now be, instead of somebody else having control and design things and what the risk is and be somewhat expensive, and it's a kind of a battle now if you have a claim as to how to get it paid and things like that. The mindset's going to change, I believe, from what are the insurance policies, somebody else designing them, to you'll be able to design your own. And based on your needs, based on your risk potential, based on how much risk you want to take yourself. I mean, there's just a lot of things like that because there's going to be so much data and information that's accessible, because if it's all going to get fed into a system, that's going to change the game. So
this wave of technology that you're talking about, this next wave, specifically in the insurance industry, if the preponderance of the insurance producer's scope of work is what you just described, is doing those tasks within a 90-day window that's been around for decades, right?
Yes.
Then
centuries.
Where does that leave that producer? If just nothing else but that happens,
it's going to leave them to the wayside, like the travel agents.
And I just want to add this, like, as a keynote speaker, I travel all over the country, other countries, and I sit in on conferences. And the way I do my speaking is, I don't just go in the room and speak and then leave. I try to, get in there when it starts and really listen. And, because there's a certain energy in the room, and there's and if you listen to the other speakers and to the stuff that's going on, you hear a broader context that you can then tie into, especially when you're talking about things like human connection and storytelling and old school interpersonal skills for influence. I cannot tell you. I mean, and I average, 4 to 6 keynotes a month for years. The number of AI executive level macro conversations, exactly like what you're saying, industry specific across dozens of industry, healthcare, finance, military, law enforcement. I mean, you name it.
Legal.
They're all saying the same thing in varying degrees of tone and urgency. But it's consistent across the board. Yeah. Anything that's client facing, for sure.
It's going to impact it. And so then what's the other side of it? Right. And so are we just kind of a naysayer and saying you're all doomed? I don't think so. That's why I say I think there's an opportunity to ride it. And how to do that is by understanding it, for one. Yeah. Not that you have to be an expert, but if you can, just like client facing, the best in the world ask the best questions. Right. Then they listen intently, and then they respond with some sort of story or narrative that evokes emotion, and you get dialogue. That's how you get connection. I
mean, at our primal level, that's what humans do. That is our social superpower.
That's what humans do.
So are you saying that contained within all of this, that there is still a relevant piece?
Yes, I think very relevant piece for the ones that understand connection.
Human connection.
And human connection, and that we're humans. We're not objects. So the ones that think we're objects and that it's just a transaction game, I believe they're unfortunately going to be in trouble. But the good news is the ones that understand, believe in human connection and want to work at their craft of that and really want to connect. This is where I didn't know it, I guess, at the time, but my dad he's the best connector.
Yeah,
Eduardo,
he's
like
amazing.
You're saying, he's amazing. And I always wonder, why can he get along with somebody so well, even if he disagrees? But he can have a conversation about, he says, you can disagree without being disagreeable. Well, that's not going to go away as long as humans exist.
I mean, he's 92, and to this day, he still walks the Capitol.
Yeah.
And still affects appropriations and funding and a range of other policy decisions in arguably the most technological period of our time.
Right.
But he has not changed his effectiveness.
Right. No, he I
mean, that's true. Like he's requested to go there. I've seen it, to walk those halls, because he can navigate the human terrain and still get shit done.
Well, he's what I'd call a Hall of Fame connector. So the people that can do that,
yeah.
And then
you're saying they're going to remain
utilize relevant. The technology for the data, the information, and the knowledge, because it's going to be able to do it so much faster than we can, and has so much more capacity to hold the information, right, and give scenarios. Yeah. But our role, I believe, is if we're going to be able to ask it the best questions and then be able to feed it the information that we want based on our requests, and it will be able to come up with
in order to harness it as a tool.
But the main thing that they have left, and that has always been, I think, the biggest value, is human connection.
And you don't think the AI can?
I don't think no. It's going to be able to give you a lot of data and information, but people don't necessarily make decisions based on data information.
Let me run this by and get your thoughts, because there's two areas where I am concerned about this, and I think we've discussed this. But so you there's multiple camps when it comes with, or a few camps when it comes to AI. There's of course the sky is falling camp, which you've said doesn't have to be that way. Look at previous industries that have found relevance, and they find a way to surf the wave and still maintain high touch human connection, and they're very successful. And I don't disagree with that. The two things that I want to get you to address, though, one is it seems that in this time of churn, we're not becoming less transactional, we're becoming more transactional. Mm-hmm. If you watch people's behavior, they're far more transactional than they were 5 years ago, just in terms of how they navigate the world. Everything's a transaction, right?
Right.
And it's so impersonal. So if your theory is right, then that's a problem. The second one is and I feel like this is one that really worries me, is there is this other side of the technology where it's just complete, almost like reckless, abandoned welcoming of the technology, and it will do everything, right? And almost like this surrender of one's agency.
Yeah.
And I tell you that because I know people right now in the client-facing world who are asking ChatGPT and other things, write my story.
Right. That's very dangerous.
I mean, that's where I'm because someone said to me one time, actually it was a neuroscientist at one of the events I was at, said, humans are great at innovation, but we kind of suck at implementation. You know, and if you look at the entanglement that's happened with mobile phones and that just alone, I worry like this complete surrendering of one's agency with the thought that it's okay to give away creativity. You know, Colin and I were talking about this offline. He was talking about as a creative, just like that's a no-go.
Right.
But it's not a no-go because a lot of people are starting to do it.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think a lot of people that are trying to jump into something that they don't know anything about or assume that you can just use ChatGPT or any of those to get into an arena that they know nothing about. It's amazingly detailed, but it's not always right. And it's going to get better as it learns more. But we're humans, and that's what I keep coming back to. And that does worry me also, though, because I mean, you know, I was on the airport the other day, or in the airport walking, and I bet 80% of the people don't even look up anymore,
Yeah.
and they don't even know where they're going. They're just like this in their phone, and
Yeah.
they've kind of lost their sense of.
They're in this represented arena versus the natural world.
That's right.
And that's not good. That's a species extinction move.
It is, and I completely agree with you. And is it going to affect some people dramatically? Yes, unfortunately.
Okay.
But I do believe that people that believe connection is important.
Right.
And that's like you said, there's camps on that well, it doesn't matter anymore because the technology is going to has more. They say by 2030.
Shit me, baby.
That's exactly right. You're going to be able to do things. The Neuralink, you
Yeah.
can put a chip in that knows everything. I mean, it's kind of amazing what can happen. Some of it's going to be good from a sensor standpoint of keeping us alive longer. I think. Well, for sure it'll keep us alive longer, but whether we're going to be humans still or not and act like humans is going to be an issue.
What are you teaching? What are you teaching now when it comes to, you know, the thing, like, what are you talking about with folks, with these producers? Because you're working with them, like you're showing them, it's taken on an accelerated urgency now, right? Like what became a body of work that evolved from, you know, a date day in the park with your daughter who showed you a better way, and then you wanted to show that. But now it's infused and informed with, you know, a tidal wave of change that if we don't start valuing human connection, this could get real ugly real fast. What kind of things do you advance with producers to say, listen, these are the kinds of things that can really make a difference on human connection in the client-facing world? Or can you give us some examples?
Yeah, we spent a lot of time on how do we ask better questions to understand what a client really wants and needs, rather than just a transaction of give me all your stuff and let me go.
Yeah, I like that.
Let me go duplicate it.
Yeah, Stuart Diamond calls that seeing the pictures in their head.
Yeah, you have to see the pictures in their head to know what's in
I like
their head.
that.
And the more that you're in tune and can like see through their eyes.
Yeah.
The best way to do that is by asking good questions. And here's the second part of it that I think is kind of becoming a lost art. Some people have gotten pretty good at asking questions, but they don't listen to the answer. They're just thinking about what their next question is. And to me, connection is all about if you ask a good question and listen intently.
Yeah.
And then you can have some dialogue, as you say, that's relatable to their pain and relevant to their goals.
Yeah.
Then you can start connecting and finding out what you really want. So we spent a lot of time on that.
Well, this gets back to your point about You actually have to want to do that, though. You have to value it. Like,
Correct.
one of the things that I say to folks is, you can have great questions, but if it's not infused with pure discovery and curiosity, it doesn't matter because they'll smell you a mile away.
That's right. It's fake. It's just like trying to be somebody else. Or you just people know, right?
Yeah.
We're humans.
Yeah.
So we spent a lot of time on that, and then you're a master storyteller, but it's what we talk about is question, story, solution.
Okay,
So
talk about
the
that.
industry has gotten over the years and years and years. There's a lot of tools that it uses, and majority of them, they teach people all their tools, and then they teach them to go share all their tools with people, and it's almost like, here's all my shit. Which of it do you want? And I got a lot of it. So which one do you want?
Yeah.
And they're like, I don't want any of it.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of why sales has a negative connotation, because they're trying to convince you to buy something you don't necessarily
Nobody cares about a product.
That's right.
Or a service.
That's exactly right.
What they care about is are you relatable to my pain and are you relevant to my goals?
Right. Exactly right. And so how are you going to know that unless you ask questions and listen intently?
So question, story, solution. And it's kind of like a dance, isn't it?
Yes, definitely is.
Yeah.
So, because you got to be able to go with where they go.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. And it's, on the science side of it, and like Tyrrell says, the brain is a metaphorical pattern matching organ with a mandate to make sense of the world, right? So, it's using metaphor to make sense of things, and it has to make sense of things. And so if you're using story coming back at them, then you're giving them the sense making tool that they need.
Right.
In an age of like just overwhelming data.
Yeah, and then they in essence tell you what they want and need, and then you say, okay, well, I got a solution for that. This fits for that instead of here's all my stuff.
Have you found that like working back in the things that they say that are important into the narrative helps? In other words, like, as they say, well, this matters to me, and then reintegrating that back into the story that you tell back to them?
Yeah, I think it has to be. I'm glad you brought that up. I kind of I made an assumption, but you're right. That is part of it. So we spend a lot of time with a series of questions about where they're going, to be excited, in emotion words about their future, bigger future.
Yeah.
We capture it all, and then we show them what it is that they said they're doing, including what's getting in the way of that and things. And so then we put it back to them. I don't know if you know this, but I did this with you. This is how we connected.
You did.
The very first
I know what it was. It was the basketball court. It was the basketball court for my. Yep. Because that was the first thing I wanted after getting out of the Army, was to build a court for my kids where they could be home on the weekends and I knew where they were.
Right.
And it's still there.
It's still there. And I asked you a lot of questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's one of the things that you said you wanted, and I presented that back
that's right.
to you.
I still have it. I still have the filter that you gave me.
In a document.
Yeah.
And so I really care. So we have something in common now.
Right.
Early on, it was like, hey, how's that basketball court coming?
Yeah.
And then when you put it up, you sent me a photo of it with the boys out playing.
I did. And now, they're all grown, and, 2 of them are coming home tonight before our middle leaves for good to go to another city. And guess what they'll be doing tonight?
They'll be out there.
They'll be out there on that court.
Yeah.
And my old ass will be out there with them, but like playing horse, not.
And so from a connection, I don't need any credit, want any credit. I just put it front and center for you, something you were thinking, so that it activated your particular activating system. And so guess what happens, though? We were talking last night. We're reciprocal humans are reciprocal in nature.
Yeah.
And so you have told me, I don't know how many times, 20, 30, 40, 50. You've sent me a lot of photos of thanks for kind of activating your mind. It's not that it wasn't there. It just hadn't been activated yet.
I tell you, this is something that's probably the right place to land this chopper on this thing. This is probably a series of conversations, but something you just brought up, reciprocity. And this is like, because I know a lot of people will come back at me and they'll say, no, Scott, AI can do storytelling. It can ask questions, and I don't refute that. But I have not seen anything that shows me yet that the reciprocity that you and I feel around something as simple and subtle as a little basketball court, right, is one of those uniquely human things that all of us experience in our own way, in this reciprocal response when someone shows up for us, when someone hears us, sees us, is relatable to pain, relevant to goals. We feel reciprocal to that.
Right.
And I've seen it. I've seen elders run up on rooftops and fight alongside teams out of pure voluntary choice.
Right.
Even get killed and wounded because of a reciprocal response. And so, for me, at the heart of this is reciprocity if it's done authentically. Like, that's the thing. And I think what you do so well, not only do you teach it, you live it. You've lived it since like that day in the park. Your dad taught it to you. But I think, man, this is where we've got to really get urgently focused.
No doubt.
What do we need to be doing? I mean, because we obviously we focused on kind of, the insurance industry, the client-facing world. But, I mean, this is really a reality for all of us. What kinds of things, maybe this is my last question to you, what kinds of things would you like to see us doing more of to bring out more of those human connection traits in the face of this transformative change?
That's a great question. First of all, I'd say that we have to be ourselves, but we have to understand ourselves to be ourselves. And when we are, then we can play that. There's a position that we can play. And if I believe that if somebody believes, as to your point, and there's a lot of pushback on this, that first of all, it was, no, it can't do any of that.
Right.
Now it's, yes, it can do all of that.
Right.
and so it's it's somewhere in between.
Right.
I believe. And if the humanity of treating people like people rather than like objects.
Yeah.
I think it's an obligation of any of ours to continue to push that bar and do what we can to make people aware of it and the impact of it, and not give up hope on just total surrender to something that we have no choice. But I would that theme of question, story, solution has resonated with my clients a lot. Of I get it, because we get so used to doing things one way that's focused on ourselves. And people don't give a shit. They care about themselves. And so we've got to try how do we help people? How do we ask questions that to show that we're interested in somebody, if you are interested in them? That there's things that you can bring to the table that might be able to help them get where they want to go.
That's so good. And we can do this with our kids, our spouse, our friends. I mean, these are the things that not many people are doing this in this time of churn. But if we practice, you can practice it. Yes. Right. What have we not covered? How can people dig in with you? Because they need to. I just believe it. Like, whether you're in the insurance industry, it doesn't matter. Like, how can people just learn more about your body of work and because you're taking this to such a practitioner level. I really want folks to know how they can stay connected to you.
Yeah, thank you. Our website is elevation180.com. There's a lot of information.
And we'll put that on
there.
The show notes too.
There's, the beauty of our friendship relationship is I think we get to share and learn from each other. Yeah. Kind of the battles and things that we're going through. And you've been very generous about story for us. And there's a lot of that in our website and what we've done. And you've helped us see things from different things that we do. So there's one division where we're coaching, directly coaching people in sales mainly. And then there's another division that's based around what we call personal operating and team operating engines, understanding teams. But that's probably the best way is reach out. There's team at elevation180.com. If anybody has a question and wants to throw it, we'll get it and would be happy to respond. But, I guess I'd say from my son, Jared, and my daughter, Kelly, and my bride, Lisa, man, had I not known some of these kinds of things, I just hate to think of what could have been, would have been of me not knowing them. And so to kind of close, I guess, is my mentor, my dad. I've been fortunate. He's been my mentor all my life. But ever since I was a kid, he would say, Jerry, our gifts, and he'd point to anybody, whether God-given or earned through hard work and preparation. Those gifts aren't meant for ourselves. They're meant to be shared with the world to make a difference greater than ourselves.
You said it to me too many times. I never get tired of hearing it.
Yeah, he's told us all that, right? So I think we have an obligation to try and eliminate some of the fear. I think we need to be honest.
Yeah.
Some things are going to change pretty dramatically, but we've got to be aware of it. And I think the saving grace is human connection.
I love that, man. Well, I tell you, I've been hitting Jerry hard that he needs to write a book. Send us some comments and help me get some amens and harumphs in there, because I think a practitioner, a guide on how to advance human connection in the face of this change is sorely needed. So hopefully you'll do that. And when you do, you'll come back on here first and talk. Nobody else.
It, definitely.
Also, for those of you who are interested, I don't really promote anything on this show, but I'll tell you what, I cannot advocate enough for what his work is. And they even do, you can do an online assessment of, right? Is that still doable?
We're about finished actually with what we call a performance or burnout calculator.
Okay.
It's not quite done, but
But also the YOS too, right?
The YOS you can do. Yeah, you could go direct and do those, or you can get a hold of us and run them. And
either way, we'll put that info on there in case anybody wants to do that.
YOS and Colby both.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, to wrap up here, I usually do this at the beginning of the show, but just a little gift here. Speaking of reciprocity, just everything that you've done for my family, and you were one of the first civilians that helped me transition from the military. In fact, when I talk about some folks coming to my aid, you're always one of the guys I mentioned, one of like three. But anyway, you've done a ton for our family, for me. And so, our both of us idolize our fathers. So my dad is real big on the American chestnut, as you know. Mm-hmm. So he's had a buddy of his, a Vietnam veteran who's also a forester, start making out of wormy chestnut, pieces of art. Wow. And so this bottle is made from a fence post that is older than the country. Wow. And so I think it would be very appropriate and I've got one for your dad as well that I'd like you to take back with you. But anyway, this is just a little thank you from the Scott Mann Podcast. It's got April 2025 on there, and we're just grateful to you for everything, buddy. Appreciate it.
Thanks, man. All right. Appreciate it very much.
Yeah, man. Thank you. All right. And everybody, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, make sure you like it, leave a review, share it. Most importantly for me is share this thing with people that could benefit from it. And just continue to work the human connection piece. It's so important in what we do. So thank you. Thank you for being part of this show. Jerry, thank you again. Your wonderful family. And we'll see you next time on the Scott Mann Podcast.